Hey Reddit. I'm 31, married, and a new mom to a beautiful baby girl. Life's been kind of a whirlwind since our daughter was born 6 months ago, but I thought we were adjusting well. My husband, Matt, has been great, attentive, helpful, and way more hands-on than I expected. We'd been together 8 years, married for 4. Trust was never an issue. Until a month ago. It started so casually. Matt's sister got one of those fun DNA kits for Christmas, 23andMe or Ancestry, something like that, and convinced the whole family to do it together, just for laughs. It was supposed to be about seeing what % Viking they were, or whether they had some long-lost royal blood or whatever. Nothing serious. Matt wasn't too thrilled, but eventually, he caved. We mailed it in and forgot about it. 3 weeks passed. Then Matt got the results. And that's when everything started changing. The day his results came back, he got weird. Really weird. I noticed it immediately. He didn't show me the results like he said he would. Just kind of muttered "huh" under his breath and shoved his phone in his pocket. That was red flag number 1. I asked what it said, and he just said, "boring." Totally what I expected. I didn't press, but something about his voice made my stomach twist. The next day, he came home from work late. The day after that, he left his phone face down constantly. He started locking the bathroom door. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the sleep deprivation was messing with my head. But then, exactly 5 days after the results came in, I got an anonymous email. No subject line. No greeting. Just one sentence. "Your baby isn't yours." Attached was a screenshot from a family tree on some Ancestry website, highlighting Matt's name, a red line labeled parent, and someone I'd never heard of listed as the mother. My name wasn't anywhere on the chart. I thought it was a prank. I thought it was a sick joke. I thought there was no way this could be real. But then I clicked the link. And what I found made me feel like I was standing in someone else's life. I stared at that chart for almost an hour. It was one of those interactive family tree profiles you can make on genealogy sites. The link led to a public profile someone had created. My husband's name was there, full name, birthday, even the city we live in. I don't know how they got that info, but it was all accurate. His parents were listed too. His sister. Even me, except I wasn't where I should have been. Under children, our baby girl was there, right where she belonged. But instead of my name under mother, there was someone else. A woman named Jessica Moore. I didn't recognize the name. Not from Matt's work, not from our friend circle, not from anywhere. No profile photo. Just a name and a note, biological mother via donor embryo. Matched through DNA. My hands started shaking. That night, I confronted Matt, not in a screaming, emotional way. I just asked straight up, "Hey, what did your DNA results say? Anything surprising?" His eyes flickered. Just for a second. And then he said something I'll never forget. "Nah, just some distant cousin matches. Nothing exciting." That was a lie. So I went digging. I couldn't access his full DNA account without a password, but I remembered the email he used to register. I tried the usual, his birthday, the name of our daughter, our anniversary. Nothing worked. But then, at 3 a.m., half out of my mind, I tried his ex-girlfriend's name. Bingo. I got in. The first thing I saw? A message. From Jessica Moore. Sent 5 days ago. The same day I got that anonymous email. She wrote, "Hi Matt. I got a DNA match for a child I placed through embryo donation 6 years ago. The father is listed as you. Can you confirm if you were ever part of a fertility clinic program or donor list? This is very important." Fertility clinic? Donor list? My husband had never been a sperm donor. At least, not as far as I knew. So I went further back. Through his messages. Through his old emails. Through his browsing history. And then I found it. An online account at a fertility clinic 2 towns over. Registered in 2017. Logged into as recently as 3 weeks ago. There was a document in the files. Donor consent form, Matthew R., active donation 2018 to 2020. I couldn't breathe. My husband had been a sperm donor. For years. Without ever telling me. And now, someone out there was claiming that the embryo from his donation had been used, and somehow, our baby matched that exact genetic signature. And the craziest part? I had been pregnant with our daughter naturally. Or so I thought. Matt never said a word about a donor embryo. So how the hell did someone else end up with a genetic claim on my child? And why did it feel like Matt knew exactly what was going on, and was hiding it? I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just lay there staring at our daughter's crib through the monitor, heart pounding, mind racing. I kept going over every moment of my pregnancy. Every ultrasound. Every kick. The night my water broke. The pain, the fear, the overwhelming joy when they placed her on my chest. She was mine. I carried her. I gave birth to her. There was no question. Except now, there was. The next day, I dropped our daughter off with my sister and went to the fertility clinic. I didn't make an appointment. I didn't call ahead. I just walked in with a photo of the donor consent form and asked to speak with someone, anyone, who could explain what was going on. At first, the receptionist gave me a tight-lipped smile and asked if I had a patient ID. I didn't. But I had my husband's name. And the form. And the rage of a woman who feels like her entire life might be built on a lie. Eventually, someone from administration came out and pulled me into a side room. That's when I learned the truth. Matt had been a donor. Not just a one-time thing. He had been part of a special private donor program, where his samples weren't available to the general public, but only to select patients who paid a premium. According to their records, 2 successful conceptions had come from his donations. 2. One 6 years ago. And 1 2 years ago. That second date made my blood run cold. Because that's when I got pregnant. When I asked if it was possible for my embryo to have been swapped with a donated one, they insisted it wasn't. They said my name didn't appear anywhere in their system. I wasn't one of their patients. But they didn't look as confident as they sounded. I left that building feeling like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. When I got home, Matt was sitting in the kitchen. Calm as ever. Like everything was normal. I asked him one question. Did you ever use a clinic to help us conceive? He blinked, hesitated, then said, of course not. Why would we? Another lie. I told him what I'd found, about the donor account, the message from Jessica, the genetic match on the Ancestry site. And for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He didn't deny it. Not exactly. He just said, it's not what you think. But when I asked him what was going on, he just shook his head and told me I was being paranoid. So I did the only thing I could think of. I had our daughter tested. I didn't tell Matt. I ordered a private DNA kit and had it rushed. And now I'm sitting here, 3 days later, staring at the results. They came in less than an hour ago. The child I gave birth to. She's biologically mine. But she's not Matt's. He's not the father. Which means, someone lied. And I think my husband knew, all along. I stared at the results for so long, my vision blurred. My DNA, 99.99% match, confirmed I carried her, no surprise there. Matt's DNA, 0% parental probability. 0. Not a partial match, not some fluke result. 0. The man who held my hand during delivery, who cut the umbilical cord, who cried when he first held her, was not her biological father. Not even a distant relation. Nothing. It didn't make sense. We'd never used IVF. We hadn't even struggled to conceive. It happened naturally, at least that's what I believed. I remember the day I took that pregnancy test. We celebrated. Called our parents. He looked just as surprised as I was. So what the hell happened? And then, something even more disturbing clicked into place. That second successful embryo transfer on Matt's donor file, the one dated 2 years ago, the one they couldn't trace to a listed patient? What if that wasn't someone else's pregnancy? What if it was mine? What if, somehow, I'd been implanted with a donor embryo without knowing? Without consenting? The idea seemed ridiculous, until I remembered something. 2 years ago, I had what I thought was a routine outpatient procedure, a uterine polyp removal. It was minor, no big deal. Matt had scheduled it. He handled all the paperwork. I remember being groggy afterward, but he was there the whole time. Told me everything went fine. Handed me water, drove me home, and tucked me in on the couch. What if that wasn't just a polyp removal? What if he arranged something more? I felt like I was going to be sick. I searched through our files, insurance statements, appointment letters, medical receipts. And then I found it. An invoice. From the same fertility clinic I visited a few days ago. The date matched that procedure exactly. But the billing code wasn't for polyp removal. It was for embryo implantation. I nearly dropped the paper. He had scheduled it. He had paid for it. He had signed the consent forms. I hadn't. I couldn't. I never even knew it happened. Which means my husband, the man I trusted more than anyone, might have orchestrated an embryo implantation, without my knowledge. And the baby I've raised, loved, fed, rocked to sleep every night, is biologically mine. But not his. Which raises one terrifying question. Whose embryo was it? Because if Matt isn't the father, then who is? And why has Jessica Moore been trying to contact us? I didn't want to believe it. I still don't. But I couldn't ignore the documents, the DNA results, or the hollow look Matt gave me when I finally confronted him with everything. He didn't even try to deny it anymore. I asked him, straight to his face, if he'd arranged to have an embryo implanted without telling me. I asked if he had substituted our plan for a simple outpatient procedure with something else, something life-changing, something irreversible. He looked down. He said nothing. And that silence said everything. I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching my life collapse in slow motion. The lies, the secrecy, the manipulation. And worse, my body being used without my knowledge, my consent, to carry a child I hadn't agreed to. But it was my child now. My daughter. My heart. And I needed to know the rest. I emailed Jessica Moore. I told her I had seen the DNA results. I didn't go into detail, just said that I needed to know how she was connected to all of this. She responded within the hour. She said she had donated embryos years ago after undergoing IVF. She and her husband had tried for 5 years to conceive. When they finally had a successful pregnancy with one embryo, they donated the remaining embryos anonymously, partly out of gratitude, partly for the hope that someone else could find joy the way they had. She didn't expect anything to come of it. The clinic promised privacy, sealed files, no identifying information. Until she took a DNA test just for fun. That's how she found out she had a genetic daughter. She said she broke down crying when she saw the alert. Her daughter, my daughter, was alive. Real. And genetically hers. Jessica had reached out to Matt first, because he was the donor listed as the biological father. That was the first moment I learned something I hadn't even thought to consider. The embryo wasn't random. It wasn't from an anonymous pair. It was hers and Matt's. Matt had used Jessica's donated embryo, and his own sperm. He had chosen it. He engineered it. He created a child with another woman's DNA, and planted it in me like it was nothing more than an arrangement. A fix for our struggles. Or worse, some twisted way to bypass adoption. Without asking. Without telling me. And now Jessica knew. She knew the truth. That her embryo had been used without proper transparency. That the woman carrying it had no idea. That the man raising her daughter was the biological father. She told me she didn't want to take her from me. But she had every legal right to try. Matt hadn't just broken my trust. He'd created a child with another woman, inside my body, and let me believe she was ours in the way every couple dreams of. He watched me fall in love with our daughter every single day, knowing he'd built that love on a lie. And now? Now Jessica wants to meet her. Not take her. Not yet. Just meet her. And I don't know what to say. I don't know what the right thing is anymore. Because everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, my body, is gone. I couldn't bring myself to answer Jessica right away. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at my daughter's toy giraffe, still sticky with applesauce from lunch. I kept thinking how small she was, how pure, how unaware of the fact that her entire existence had become the center of a storm no child deserves to be caught in. Matt came home early that day. He must have known the truth had fully unraveled, because he didn't bother with his usual fake calm. He looked nervous. Not anxious like someone who got caught, nervous, like someone who was still hiding something and didn't know how to say it. I told him Jessica wanted to meet the baby. He didn't look surprised. He just sat down, rubbed his hands together like he was trying to warm up, and said the words I will never forget. There's something else. Of course there was. He took a breath and finally confessed that this hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment plan. It wasn't a last-minute swap at the clinic. It wasn't desperation. It was intentional. Meticulously planned. He had been tracking Jessica for months before the donation even happened. He had come across her on a fertility forum, found her story moving, and when he discovered she had embryos stored and was listed as a donor through a private agency, he made a request. Not to use a random donor. To use her. He wanted her as the genetic mother of his child. At the time, we weren't even actively trying. I thought we were just letting things happen naturally and seeing where life took us. But he had already made up his mind. He had selected her, donated fresh samples, and arranged for the clinic to prep one of her embryos, fertilized with his sperm. And then, when I had that polyp removal appointment, he scheduled it under false pretenses. Told the clinic I'd already agreed to the transfer. Showed them forged paperwork. They believed him. And just like that, I became the surrogate for a baby I didn't consent to carry, a baby that wasn't genetically mine at all. Except she is mine. I carried her. I delivered her. I love her in ways no biology test can measure. And the worst part? Matt looked me in the eye and said he did it because he wanted to build the perfect family. That I was meant to be her mom even if I wasn't her genetic parent. He called it fate. I called it violation. He stole my choice. He turned me into a vessel for his dream without ever asking what I wanted. And now, Jessica, who had no idea her embryo would be used this way, is emailing me again. Gently, kindly, but clearly overwhelmed. She wants to meet, to understand, to connect, and I have no idea what to do. Because how do you make peace with a betrayal that started inside your own body? I agreed to meet Jessica. I didn't want to. Not because I was angry at her, I wasn't. She was a victim in this too. Her embryos were supposed to go to a loving, fully informed family. What she got instead was a manipulated, unethical, possibly illegal breach of that promise. But I was scared. Scared she'd see my daughter and feel something I wasn't ready for. Scared she'd want to take her back. Scared, deep down, that I wouldn't be able to stop her. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. I went alone. I didn't tell Matt. I didn't trust myself to even sit next to him at that point, let alone bring him into a conversation that would re-break my heart in front of a stranger. Jessica looked nothing like I expected. She wasn't polished or intimidating. She looked tired. Older than her pictures online. Her hands shook slightly when she reached for her cup. And the first thing she said wasn't about the child, or the clinic, or even Matt. It was, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never would have agreed to any of this." And I believed her. She told me she had only learned the truth when she got her DNA match alert and saw Matt's name. She thought it was a mistake. Until she searched, dug, found his social profiles, found mine, found photos of our daughter. Her daughter. But she never reached out with demands. She said she stared at those photos for days, just crying. Happy her biological child was alive. Sad she'd missed everything. And then she said something that made my whole chest tighten. I didn't come to take her away. I came to meet the woman who loved her enough to protect her from the man who used both of us. We sat in silence for a while. And then, I did something I didn't plan to do. I showed her a photo. My favorite. The one where my daughter is asleep on my chest, mouth slightly open, one hand curled in my shirt like she's anchoring herself to me. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She didn't ask to keep it. She just whispered, "She looks happy." I told her she is. Jessica didn't ask to meet her. She said she wasn't ready. She didn't want to confuse her or disrupt her life. But she asked if she could send letters. Maybe a photo book someday. Nothing binding, nothing invasive. Just something our daughter could look at when she's older, if she ever asks. And I said yes. Because I knew right then, I was never going to lie to my daughter. She deserved the truth. But she also deserved to hear that she was loved from every direction. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling, not whole, not fixed. But clearer. Jessica hadn't come to take anything. She'd come to make peace with what was stolen from both of us. But just when I thought the worst of the storm had passed, I got a text. From a blocked number. It said, "Check your daughter's birth certificate. You'll find my name." And now? Now I'm shaking all over again. Because I don't know who sent it. But I know what they're implying. I didn't want to believe it was real. Part of me hoped it was a prank. Some internet troll who'd stumbled across Jessica's profile or found a comment thread somewhere and decided to mess with me. But something about that message felt different. I remembered something. When I was discharged from the hospital after giving birth, I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and barely functional. Matt had handled most of the paperwork, hospital forms, insurance stuff, even the birth certificate. He said he'd filled it out for me because I needed rest. At the time, I was grateful. Now, I was terrified. I called the state records office the next morning and requested an official copy of the certificate. I paid for express delivery and sat on my front steps like a guard dog until it arrived 2 days later. I didn't open it inside. I didn't want my daughter to see me fall apart. I ripped the envelope open like it was on fire. And there it was. My name, listed as mother. Matt's name, listed as father. And below it, in tiny print, under legal parentage order amended by court petition, May 2022. That date hit me like a sledgehammer. It was just weeks after my daughter was born. I was still recovering, still in postpartum fog, still bleeding. Still crying from hormones and lack of sleep. That was the same week Matt insisted I take a self-care day and go to the spa with my sister. He paid for it, booked it, told me he'd watch the baby. That was the day he filed the amendment. I didn't understand what it meant, so I looked it up. A legal parentage order. An amendment can only be filed if one or both parents petition the court to change the listed biological or legal parent. Usually used in adoption cases, or in donor situations. And there was another name. In the amendment record section, Jessica Moore removed Matthew R., sole petitioner. Removed. He removed Jessica's name from the original record. She had been listed as the genetic mother at the time of the embryo transfer. Probably default data from the clinic. But Matt had gone to court, filed a private petition, and had her name erased from the legal documents. No notification. No consent. Nothing. Which means Jessica had no legal standing anymore, not unless she challenged it in court. And I had never even known she was on the form to begin with. Matt erased her like she was a typo. And me? I was just collateral. The woman who carried a child I hadn't even been allowed to choose. I sat in my driveway with that paper trembling in my hands. I must have looked insane to the neighbors. But I didn't care. That wasn't just a betrayal. It was control. Manipulation. Possibly even fraud. And just as I was spiraling, I got a second message from the same blocked number. It said, "He didn't stop with you." My blood ran cold. What the hell did that mean? Was I the only one? Was there another? I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in bed, eyes wide open, phone clutched to my chest, replaying that message over and over in my mind. He didn't stop with you. It felt like a warning. A riddle I didn't want to solve, but couldn't ignore. By morning, I decided to trace the message. I used a burner lookup app my brother had shown me once. It's not foolproof, but it's good enough to catch sloppy mistakes. The number was masked, but not completely. I traced it to a prepaid phone purchase 2 towns over, registered under the name L. Haynes. That name meant nothing to me. But then I remembered Matt's old company. Before he got into software, he worked briefly at a biotech lab that handled cryogenics and genetic testing. He barely talked about it, said it was just for experience. Only stayed a year. Left with no warning. I pulled up the old employee directory through the Wayback Machine. And there it was. Lauren Haynes. Lab tech. Same town as the phone registration. My stomach dropped. I searched her name online, found an old LinkedIn profile. Then a Facebook page. She hadn't posted in over a year, but she had one photo pinned at the top. It was of her and a little boy, around 3 years old, playing at a park. At first, I just stared at it. Nothing registered. And then the details clicked. The boy had Matt's eyes. His nose. Even that same crooked pinky Matt's mom always said ran in their family. I couldn't breathe. I messaged her. I didn't even hesitate. I just typed, "I think we need to talk. I'm Matt's wife." She responded within minutes. Not with a question. Not with confusion. Just this. "I've been waiting for this. We met that afternoon. Neutral spot. Public. I brought a friend just in case." Lauren came alone, holding her son's hand. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. And the moment we sat down, she told me everything. Matt had dated her casually while working at the lab. Nothing serious, or so she thought. But after they broke it off, she started getting calls from a clinic. One she'd never contacted. They told her she was listed as the recipient for a donor embryo. She said no. They said the forms were signed. By her. She said it must be a mistake. They insisted everything was filed properly. When she demanded proof, the clinic went silent. Months passed. And then she got pregnant. Yes, somehow, despite her saying no, an embryo had been implanted. And Matt? He ghosted her before the first ultrasound. She raised the child alone. Never pursued legal action because she didn't have the money or the fight in her anymore. She just wanted to protect her son. But after seeing Matt on Jessica's family tree match, she started to connect the dots. So she reached out to me. Through the blocked number. That's when it hit me. Matt didn't just betray me. He created lives, families, without anyone's full consent. He was playing God. Choosing genetics, arranging pregnancies, forging paperwork. 3 women. 3 children. And who knows how many more. And now, I'm sitting here with my daughter in my arms, watching her sleep peacefully, completely unaware of the twisted web she was born into. I don't know what to do next. But I do know this. Matt's about to learn what it feels like when every single one of his secrets comes crashing down. I didn't tell Matt I knew. Not yet. I needed time to prepare, for myself, for my daughter, for what I knew was going to come crashing down the moment I said the words out loud. So I started gathering. Screenshots of messages. DNA test results. The birth certificate amendment. The clinic's paperwork showing forged consent. Lauren's story, her timeline. Jessica's emails. It was all there, all lined up, an ugly, perfect puzzle. I hired a lawyer. Not to sue. Not yet. I just wanted to know my rights. Because what Matt did wasn't just a betrayal, it was a legal gray zone of consent violations, medical fraud, and possibly reproductive coercion. And then, I planned a dinner. One final performance. I told Matt I wanted to talk about healing and moving forward. I cooked his favorite meal. Set the table. Lit candles. Pretended I was still his wife. He walked in smiling, clueless. He said something smug like, "Glad we're getting past all the drama." I sat across from him and slid a manila folder onto his plate. Inside it? Everything. The test results. Jessica's letter. Lauren's photo of their son. The court documents. The list of every single appointment he scheduled behind my back. His face changed in slow motion. Smile dropped. Jaws clenched. Then his hands started shaking, ever so slightly. He didn't speak for a long time. And then finally, he said, "I did it for us." I didn't flinch. I told him, calmly, that he'd done it for control. For ego. For whatever twisted fantasy he'd built about crafting the perfect family, no matter who he had to use or erase to get it. And then I told him I was done. I handed him a second folder, divorce papers. His mouth opened. But I didn't let him speak. I told him I'd already retained counsel. That my lawyer had spoken with both Lauren and Jessica's attorneys. That a class action lawsuit wasn't off the table. That the clinic had been informed. That they were cooperating. And that if he tried to fight custody, I'd make sure every judge in the state saw the truth. He sat there, stunned. He asked, finally, "So what, you're going to tell everyone?" I said, "No." Then I looked him in the eye and told him the truth. "You're going to." I told him he had one chance to come clean. To send a full confession to the court, to the clinic, and to both women, explaining what he did, admitting it under oath, taking responsibility. He said no one would ever believe it. I told him the documents would. The DNA would. His own child's face would. And then I stood up, kissed my daughter on the forehead, and walked out the front door. He didn't follow. He didn't call. He didn't fight. Not yet. But the ripple had already started. Lauren and Jessica are both pursuing legal action now. I'm assisting. Quietly. Carefully. Our children may not understand now, but one day they'll ask who they are. Where they came from. And I'll be ready. I don't know what justice will look like in the end. But I know this. I will never again be used, silenced, or written out of my own story. He built a life on lies. I'm building one on truth. And I'm not afraid of what comes next.